started, when you want to be identified, use the icon, the hand up icon. We all clear on that? Okay. And then if I'm missing somebody, just, let me know, okay?
Okay, we're ready to go whenever you are.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the February 17th, 2021 meeting of the Oyster River Cooperative School Board. Since we're operating remotely, I'm required to read a preamble, which I'll do right now. As chair of the Oyster River Cooperative School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Microsoft Teams for this electronic meeting. All members of the school board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following telephone number: 1-603-766-5646 and ID code 461362 hashtag. Or by clicking on the following website address: http://
Okay, you're good to go.
Okay. Instructions have also been provided on the website of the ORCSD board agenda for February 17th, 2021. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please call 603-280-4202 or email at orcsd-video@orcsd.org. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call of attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Okay, I wonder if we can just go across the top. So Denise,
Present, no one in the room.
um, Dan,
Present, no one in the room.
Yuzi? Can't hear you.
Present, no one in the room.
Thank you. Brian,
Present, no one in the room.
Michael,
I'm here and I'm alone.
Al,
Here and alone.
and I'm Tom Newkirk here, and I'm alone. Okay, the next order of business is the approval of the agenda. I have two changes. As I think you all know, the Schoology report is postponed till the March 3rd when we should be in person. And we've moved the anti-racism committee update to the first item on the superintendent's report. So with those two changes, could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Denise? Oh. Moved by Brian. Denise?
I'll second.
Moved by Brian, second by Denise. We need a roll call vote. Let's see. Denise?
Yes.
Yuzi?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
And I'm yes. Tom Newkirk, yes. So the agenda is approved. Dr. Morse, I don't know if you have public comment?
There are no public comments tonight, Tom.
No public comments. Can we move to the approval of the minutes, the regular minutes for February 3rd? Can I have a motion to approve those? Let's see.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Brian. Is there a second? Second, Denise?
I will second.
Are there changes? Hearing none. Denise Day?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
Yuzi?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Michael Williams?
Yes.
Al Howland?
Yep.
Tom Newkirk, yes. So the regular minutes are approved. Could I have a motion to approve the non-public meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Brian. Is there a second, Denise?
Second.
Discussion? Denise Day?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes. Yes.
Yuzi Terrell?
Yes.
Brian Cisneros?
Yes.
Michael Williams?
Yes.
Al Howland?
Yep.
Tom Newkirk, yes. So the non-public minutes are approved. Announcements, commendations, and comments from the district? I see none. Is that correct? Okay. From the board? Michael?
Boy, there's been a lot that's happened in the last 2 weeks, but I want to just touch on a couple of things. One is that the CDC recommendations for school governance came out on Friday after we set the agenda for this week, or put together the agenda for this week's meeting. And reading through that, I think we're hitting most of the points there pretty well. A lot of the salient points that are part of our precautions are part of that report, and that's to the credit of the nursing team and the school board district leadership. The one thing that is, I think, the most notable thing that we're not doing that was part of the CDC recommendations is a screening testing program. And so I think that's something that we need to continue to pursue to support the staff in all of our schools. And the other thing I want to just comment on is we've made a lot of progress recently in terms of the number of students in school at the middle school and in a few weeks at the high school. And so it's probably time to return our attention to the elementary schools where we haven't changed anything since the start of the school year and look at what we can do to increase the number of students or the number of hours that they have access to for the rest of the school year as well.
Thank you. Yuzi?
It does feel like we've turned a corner in all buildings, all students having the option for hybrid learning. I think the summer and next fall will be soon upon us, as Dr. Morris has said, And we've spoken previously how effective committees can be. So just planting a seed after the elections, I think it would make sense to come back and together and consider what committees or support could work with Dr. Morris administration and other stakeholders to anticipate what decisions we'll need to make at certain points, and in a sort of thoughtful and thorough way prepare the materials and prepare the decision rubrics, how we're going to make decisions for the summer and fall planning.
Thank you. Others? I'd just like to say that I took a trip up to Thompson Road Avenue, whatever, and down to the Kenny Rotner Bridge and crossed the Kenny Rotner Bridge into the land that was, put into conservation, and just how, I stopped at the middle of the bridge and just thought of Kenny and how much he would have loved to have taken the walk that I took today. So just to share that. Okay, so we have no unanimous consent agenda. Is there anybody else with comment? I don't see anybody. No unanimous consent agenda. The Assistant Superintendent. Todd?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Couple of things I wanted to report on tonight. That both are in your portfolio. The first one I would like to talk about is the latest metric, and it actually speaks to some of what Michael just said. Just to give you a quick overview, I'm not going to run through everything, but clearly, if you look at the data, things are trending in a really positive direction. For the most part, hospital capacity has moved from the high risk to the middle. Most of our categories are shifting toward the medium and lower risks, so that's really good news. One thing I would like to report, and I know this has been all over the local news, is that there is a disconnect between the state rates and then the county rates because, as many of you have heard, the case counts in Durham are significantly high right now. Obviously, we attribute that to the return of UNH and students coming back. But one of the things that Dr. Harvey did remind me of, don't just automatically discount that as being just a UNH factor. Ultimately, high counts will result in community spread. To what level, we don't know yet, but something to keep in mind. When you look at the metric, you will notice there's a couple of categories where in the 3-week trend transmission rate, you can see it's kind of all over the place. She's highlighted in all 3 categories. What that means is that depending on which data point you look at, where we have risks that are in the high, medium, and low category, that really speaks to the fact that Stratford County, Durham in particular, is got a fairly high case count. So you'll notice things like transmission rate in Stratford County are up, and the vast majority of that is Durham and related to UNH, as well as you'll notice the positive test rate in New Hampshire's 11.8, in Stratford County it's 21. Again, most of that is attributable to the very high case counts in Durham associated with that outbreak. So certainly it absolutely warrants closer monitoring. The 2 local things that I want to just kind of highlight for you, we track contact tracing capacity as well as staffing capacity. Right now, contact tracing, we're able to handle it. We have all 5 of our nurses actively working. I do want to just point out that one of the things that we are concerned about is as you bring more students into the school, the ability to contact trace is challenged. And I know the nurses are concerned, particularly at the high school, with more students. If you get more contact tracing, it would challenge the system. But so far, we're in a good place with that. And staffing capacity, we're in a pretty good place. We're still actively trying to hire the positions that you very generously approved, and we are in the process of activating a number of subs that have previously worked for us. So we will be ready in the event that we need to provide additional coverage. Overall, we're in a good place. And I think, like I say, the trends seem to be heading in the right direction with the exception of the high Durham case counts. And all of our models are working well, and that's good news. I would like to just also take a minute to point out, if you haven't had a chance to check it out, the COVID dashboard that is now on our website is, in my opinion, the envy of other school systems. And I want to attribute Josh Olstead for his hard work to make that happen. Based on some community feedback, asking for us to provide more historical data, as well as to disaggregate the positives from the quarantines. We now are able to do that. And so a person can go there and get a really good sense of kind of where things are at. Again, as I pointed out multiple times, the one thing that stands out on that is you can see the purple line for Durham going up because the case counts in Durham have gone up pretty dramatically in the last week. So any questions about the COVID metric?
Denise?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because I haven't gone on the school district website to check. I did like a week ago, but where, as far as the schools right now, how are we doing this week with transmission as far as affecting the schools?
The numbers are relatively low. There's a higher number, 6 cases out of the high school that are a number of them associated with a particular program. And then district-wide, there are 2 other positive cases. So that's total. We have a number of people in quarantine for various reasons. But again, better safe than sorry. Most of those are at the high school. The highest number of quarantines is at the high school right now. But again, that stands to reason because it's also the place with the highest population of students. Any other questions on the metric? And I would just as a quick point about what Micah was saying, I do think one of the things that was very confirming in the CDC guidance is that the items that we are tracking align very well with what they are telling us to do, which they also told us to do last summer, which is why we're doing it. But I think the newest recommendation is more emphatic and clear. I think if there's one thing that we realize is that the fact that we have some successful hybrid programs going gives us kind of local confidence that we can keep moving. And that is one of the items in the CDC report that, if you have locally successful programming that you've been able to manage and mitigate various factors, that you should keep those programs going. And I think that speaks to the logic that we used when we adopted the new metric. So enough said on that. I also wanted to just quickly talk to you. Back in January, I did a report on STAR assessment data, and a question came up regarding had we noticed any difference between the in-person versus the remote students. And so we've just completed the winter STAR assessment. And so I share with you that report. That the memo is in your portfolio for you to take a look at. Some things that I would like to just sort of highlight for you. One of the things that's important when you're talking data and you're making comparisons, it's really important to understand that there are variables that play a role in your ability to make these comparisons that might make the data more or less valuable. One thing to keep in mind this year, because of the pandemic, all classroom groupings are based upon the selection that parents made regarding whether they were in person or remote. So it's not, the balance of groups is not consistent with past years. So it is important to keep in mind that when you make a comparison of in-person to remote students, that's more a function of family choices than it is necessarily a balanced academic group. So just keep that in mind. The other thing to make note of is that as one would expect, families that are choosing the remote option are less inclined to let their child come in and do the STAR assessment. So the participation rate for remote students is lower than the participation rate for in-person students. Overall, about 85% of our students have participated in the STAR assessment, but in the remote classes, it's been about 70%, just to kind of give you that perspective. In the memo, I shared with you kind of 3 years worth of data at the Moheramet and Mastway schools for STAR. keep in mind that the only level we can make the in-person versus remote comparison is at the elementary level, because middle and high school, it's far too fluid. You can't separate out who is what, on any given week or any given day. That changes. At the elementary schools, we've had set groups that allow for that comparison, and grades 2 through 4 are where we do STAR. So basically what I've shared with you is a comparison of in-person versus remote 2 through 4. So historically, we usually see about a 10% growth rate in both math and reading scores. And this year, we have had between the first round and the second round, we've seen a pretty substantial growth from the first to second round of STAR, about 8 or 9% growth. So that's overall. When you look at the data regarding the in-person versus remote, you'll see quite frankly, it's very little difference. I think the difference is small enough that I don't think you can really draw any conclusion, other than to say, I don't think you're seeing at least in terms of an academic performance standpoint, a disadvantage to the remote kids or the in-person kids on the assessment. If you look at in-person versus remote at Mastway, you can see on the winter math, you can see 78% of the in-person kids were proficient in math versus 74% of the remote. If you do the same comparison at Moheramet, 75% of the in-person kids were proficient versus 74% of the remote. Looking at reading, you can see at Mastway, you can see 75% of the in-person kids were proficient in reading and 80% of the remote kids. And then the same comparison at Mastway, you have 73% of the in-person reading students were proficient and 78% of the remote. Again, not a big enough difference to say one way or the other whether the in-person or the remote situation is an advantage or disadvantage at this point. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have on that.
Ms. Yuzi? Mike? Your mic?
You're muted. You're still muted.
I was the one who had asked for that breakdown, so thank you for that. And it's interesting that as you say, there's no difference that couldn't be attributed more to individual teachers or even the profiles of different students or families who chose to come in or stay remote.
I agree. Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions? And I'll just make one last quick announcement, just because I know people are starting to think about it. We are actively in the process of planning the REACH program. I hope to have an announcement about it right after vacation, where we're hoping to run a complete program like we've done in past years. Going to try to have it be as much outdoors as we possibly can to take advantage of the fresh air. So I'll have an announcement about that after the break. So thank you.
Dr. Morse, you want to introduce the racism committee, or?
Yeah, I would gladly do that. I'm actually going to introduce Tessa, and then she can introduce her team. We have had a very active anti-racism committee since the beginning of the middle of the summer, as a reaction to a petition that we received from the community, and basically acknowledging that we've been working on diversity and inclusion now for 4 years, but asking us to step up our energy around the issue of anti-racism. One of the wonderful things that's happened in this school year is not just the community stepping up, but our own students have stepped up. And so we've had a number of high school kids participate, and most recently we've had middle school students join us as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Tessa to talk, to introduce her team and to talk more about the work that we've been doing. Tessa.
Hi, yeah, so we are the student sect of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We've been running since the start of this year, and And today we're just going to talk to you a bit about what we've done, what we're hoping to do, what our goals are, and kind of how this committee works. And then I'll get into the racism policy that I've been working with Dr. Morse and Mr. Allen on. So I think Zoe Selig is going to start us off.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Zoe Selig. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a sophomore at the high school. I joined the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion group for several reasons, the primary one being that I know what it's like to be a minority student in Oyster River, and I want to make that experience better for future students. So the DEI has a lot of different goals, and my peers will talk about how we plan to achieve them in a minute. But the biggest thing that we want to do is just to create a more equitable and inclusive school. We want to reevaluate curriculums to be more diverse, and we want to teach true history and current events. We also hope to help students of color advocate for themselves and to create safe spaces for all students at Oyster River.
Hello, I am Marlise Hyde. I'm a freshman and I use she, her pronouns. I joined the DEI because I wanted to help make the Oyster River School District a more equitable space for everyone. We have accomplished many agenda items so far. We have presented our ideas for the district to teachers in the large DEI. We have placed an ad in Aura TV explaining what we are and what we do. Students have talked with a representative from all schools in the district. We also have bi-weekly meetings with a large DEI. The students have worked together to create a list of what we want improved in the school district. Finally, we have helped revise the anti-racism district policy.
Hello, my name is Paige Burt. I use she, her pronouns. I joined the DEI because I wanted to help make our school district as safe and inclusive as possible. Our plans for the near and distant future include organizing a trip to the Black Heritage Trail in Portsmouth, normalizing using pronouns and introductions, teaching Black history all 12 months of the year, not just during Black History Month, talking with Michael Ward, who's a public speaker and the author of Sketches of Lee, create an anonymous forum or a safe space for community members to share discriminatory experiences, and to create and revise racism and anti-racism procedures.
Hi, I'm Maya. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a sophomore at Oyster River, and I joined the DEI because I want to make sure all students are learning about the whole history of the U.S. and not the whitewashed version. Every other Tuesday, the students meet with a large DEI group, which includes ORCSD staff, New Hampshire Listens, parents, and the administration. We also meet as a student group every week to discuss specific plans and updates, and we have been communicating with each school in the district and work closely with the administration, ORTV, and other diversity clubs in the school to create a more equitable learning environment for everyone.
Hi, so it's Tessa again, and of course I use she, her pronouns as well, and so I joined because I wanted to advocate for our minority students in our school district and ensure that we're teaching our students how to be anti-racist and making sure that they know how to take part in social justice movements. I've been working with Dr. Morse and Mr. Allen to revise our district's racism policy. And so going into this, we had three main goals: to expand the language to include teachers and staff and not just students, to demonstrate a clear commitment to ongoing work to becoming anti-racist, and strengthening the language that is condemning racism. And this is really important to do this in our policy because these policies set the tone for our district, and we wanted to make it clear to everyone within our district and outside how we our stance on racism, how we will handle racist actions, and also our commitment to anti-racism. So I just want to thank you all for listening to us today. We know this work is so incredibly important, and it's not just a momentary movement. This is ongoing work. This is an ongoing commitment to being anti-racist and to addressing our own biases and condemning racism. If you would like to help work with us, whether it's joining the large DEI meetings or simply trying to get involved with some of the goals and our plans that we have laid out today, then please feel free to reach out to myself, Tessa Littman, she, her pronouns, 21 LIPBT at ORCSD. Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. Denise and Yussi, you're on the committee. Did you want to add anything to the work that we've been doing so far?
The students, as you can tell, have done a phenomenal job on this committee. I mean, I just can't say enough about how valuable their input and their leadership, frankly, on this committee is. So really want to say a big thank you to them. And I really feel good about the positive momentum that we have going. We do have a number of subcommittees that are starting up to deal with specific aspects, such as communications and, community outreach and different things like that. So, yeah, it's really exciting to kind of see us working on this very important issue.
And it fits right into, I think, what, as a country, we're seeing about how institutions have been founded, the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we don't tell ourselves. And so clearing the way for teachers and students to be helping us evolve in this way is tremendously inspirational. And thank you, Tessa, and students also for reminding us that it's not a sprint with a finish line. This is an ongoing process that we're dedicated to.
And Tom, if you want to take questions from the board for the students, if there are any questions. Sure.
Are there questions from the board for the students?
Not seeing any, but I just do want to echo Denise's word, how proud I am as a superintendent to have such gifted and vocal students on such an important issue. They have been instrumental in the direction we've gone and been articulate advocates for equity and inclusion in our district, and really have brought a strong sense of anti-racism language that really was new to us this fall. So I want to thank them all for just being such active participants in this work. Thank you, guys.
So just a question about process. This is not a policy that we're going to be voting on today, but my understanding is it'll go back to the policy committee one more time, then come back to us, or what's the process? Maybe Denise, do you have a sense of the sequence?
Yes. So the policy that Tessa and Dr. Morse and I know that I think others were involved as well, but they put together a draft that was reviewed at policy committee, and a number of changes were suggested. But of course, we were meeting virtually, so it was hard to, we were hearing them, but we couldn't see them on paper. So I asked that we have the cleaned up copy at our next policy committee meeting so we could review it before it comes before the board for first read.
Okay. And the next policy meetings, is it the 3rd of March or something like that?
Second week of March, I believe. I want to say
Okay.
the 12th, maybe.
Okay.
Or 11th. I think it's March 11th.
Okay. Okay, great. Other questions? Well, again, I want to thank the student group that's come before us. Your passion, your articulateness, and your commitment to this issue. Just want to thank you for all you've done and for all you're going to do. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you for having us.
Mm-hmm.
So
Dr.
Tom,
Morse,
yeah,
do you want to move on?
Yeah, we'll do. Just want to remind everybody that the PTOs at Mohammed and Massway have been working together to create a candidates forum, 2 candidates forums, and that because of the number of candidates we have, they've chosen to break it up over 2 nights, March 2nd for the at-large seat in Medbury, and March 4th for Lee and Durham. And in between, of course, we have a school board meeting. So that'll be 3 nights for at least more than half of the board. So I hope that the community tunes in. We've offered the services, our video streaming services. Alex been involved with both PTOs. So I think it'll be an incredibly interesting evening, and I hope evenings, and I hope people will tune in. Moving on, the grandstands. One of the big questions that we had is if we could move the process fast enough to have the grandstands in place before graduation. And Jim Brzezicki does have a commitment letter that they will be on property by mid-May. And that means it's about 2 weeks to install. So they definitely will be ready for graduation. So that's really good news. I want to invite Suzanne into the conversation to give a quick update on where she is in the high school process for March 8th. So Suzanne, I'm sorry, Suzanne, before I go, I've got 2 hands up. Denise, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to know, with respect to the candidates night, if it would be possible to post the link on the district website to be, so that folks might have a hard time going on social media to find the link, or if we could possibly post it on on our district website.
We will do that, Denise. Thank you. And UC, you had a question?
My question was also about the forums. I know that they'll be recorded. I also know sometimes it takes a few days to turn around the recording so that it's available. Do we think that by the end of that week, for example, both forums will be available for later viewing in case people miss them?
Yeah, UC, let me ask the man behind the curtain. Alex, did you hear UC's question?
Yes, I did. The recording availability will be dependent on how long they go. So if it's a nice short meeting, I can get it up quickly. But if it's a longer meeting, then it could take quite a bit of time. So I can't guarantee that, but I will work my best to do that. In terms of getting the link or people viewing the link, they can go to orcsd.org/stream, just the way you're watching this board meeting now, to view that.
Thank you, Alex. And UC, do you have another question? Because your hand isn't down yet. Okay, thanks. All right. I'm sorry that it's a little awkward because I'm looking at another screen while I'm trying to communicate with you guys. So if I don't see your hand, I apologize up front. So Suzanne, can you give us a quick update on where we are with the preparations for March 8th?
Sure. So can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we are finishing up getting information from families. We have, as of early today, we had 45 families that we were still reaching out to, and the last grouping of families, around 100 or so families, we've been calling. So we're just waiting to connect with them. So if we pull the 45 families out of this data, this doesn't include them, we have right now, we have 58% of the students coming in person and 42% staying remote. So that's, and I don't, the numbers have been staying pretty close to that. I don't really believe, even after we get the 45 students, that there'll be very much variation. So again, that's 58 of the students that will be coming in, and 42 that will remain remote. So we also have been working with faculty we have a mix of interest by faculty as far as the type of instructional practices they'll be using. And so we've been working with faculty and providing some professional development opportunities, and we'll continue to do that even the week after we return from vacation. And I've been working closely with Celeste Best and the leadership team around creating those opportunities for faculty. And they range from a lunch and learn that we do on Fridays and people sharing different strategies they're trying and using, to department meetings, to meetings that we had today, with different groups of faculty that have expressed interest in utilizing different types of instructional practices. So there really isn't one instructional practice. It's really a variety of practices that people are going to be using throughout the building. Right now, what we're working on, the leadership team is working on solidifying those numbers. We'll be sending out confirmation emails. I'll be sending those out over vacation. We continue to work on, as Todd said, hiring the paraprofessionals that we need. And we'll continue to do that over the vacation. We'll be purchasing technology, getting rooms, continue to get rooms set up the way that we need to have them set up to support faculty. We're still working on the methods that we're going to be using to ensure that all teachers that are in person have the classrooms that are appropriate for the number of students that they're going to be having in the building. So that might mean we need to shift some faculty around in classrooms. That might mean we need to move some students off of their alphabet split. So we're going to continue to work on that. And we also are working on different a method that we're going to use to be able to determine what the classroom coverage is for faculty that need to split time. So if they're going to be teaching the students that are remotely, we need to find coverage for that classroom. So we're working on exactly how we're going to be doing that, how we're going to get that information from faculty and provide that coverage for them and give them an alternative space to teach the remote students in as well. So there's a lot of classroom readiness and building readiness that goes with that. And we continue to work on pushing information out about the model, about safety, about procedures, things like open campus, parking, and different types of guides that we'll be sharing with families. When we return from vacation, we will have a live meeting for families, trying to figure out exactly the date and time. There's a lot going on when we get back from vacation, so I don't want to create conflicts for families. So we're working on that right now, but we will have, it'll probably be an early meeting so that we don't have a conflict with anything else going on in the evening. And then we will also continue to have more PD options and continue to work with faculty around making sure that they're ready for students to come on the 8th, and transportation and all of that. So that's really where we are. We're going to be also, when we get back from vacation, we'll be meeting with students that week during advisory and talking to them about policies and procedures and what the lunchroom will look like, and going over all of those different pieces with the kids as well before they come on the 8th. And we should be in good shape by the time the 8th comes. So I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have about what we're doing and how we're getting ready for that.
Yuzi?
You mentioned working to match the 58% of students as a whole, but down at the class level, making sure that each classroom was the appropriate size for the students who are coming in, and looking at the alphabet split. With 58%, it's close enough to 50% that I have to ask, is there any way that with creative jiggling, the 58% could come in each day instead of splitting it? We think our capacity within a classroom is about 50%. And so if we are just a little bit over that, is there troubleshooting for the particular classes that are bursting at the seams and might go to another classroom, such that all 58% would be able to come in each day?
So we did look at that, and we do not have the ability to bring all 58 in every day. So kids don't stay cohorted. They are shifting and changing with every single room that they go to. So while one class might be 5 students, the next class they're going to could be 14 or 15 students. And by moving one student off of that group doesn't necessarily mean it's going to even out the rest of the classes that they're in. So it has a ripple effect. So even though we may say that it's 58 of the students, it's not 50. It's misleading because it makes it sound like it's 58% of all the classes, and it's not. So 58%, you can also look at by grade. So if you look at the freshmen, there's a higher participation rate with in-person opportunities for the freshmen in comparison to the seniors. It drops off a little bit with each grade level, the older the kids get. So, we have a higher number of freshmen in those classes. And so that's, I wish it was an easy split like that. It's just not.
Suzanne, I had a question. Is this survey that you have of these parents definitely committed to these options, or is that it's a definite commitment? Okay.
It was titled Commitment Survey, so that people knew they were committing. And we will send a verification. I'm working on that with Sue Johnson and Celeste to get the list of names. And over vacation, we'll be sending a verification of choice.
Yuzi? I'm sorry. It's your hands down. Other questions for Suzanne? I see none. So thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
So the next report, Tom, is the summary of the Concurrent Learning Committee. And I have to say that it was an amazing experience meeting so many educators from around the state and outside the state, either through conversations or through active engagement in the committee. People were really forthcoming and very honest with us. And so we tried to make sure that this report represented accurately the conversations from the many people we talked to. I think the most, just in terms of how we did this, we did interviews. We interviewed 27 different teachers and 6 administrators. We did a virtual roundtable on January 26th with 23 participants. We did classroom observations. Todd and I actually observed the model being taught. We did a brief survey. We did an internal feasibility assessment related to technology and privacy and safety. And we looked at online training resources. So the body of the report is much like the asynchronous-synchronous report, and it's got a lot of information. One of the comments from a teacher who lives in our district but who teaches in a different district was, there's a lot of information packed in a very tight package here, and a lot of really good information. I think that I want to get right to the major finding, and this isn't a surprise, but it also contributes to why we are as successful as we are as a district. And that is, we rely so heavily on teachers making informed decisions, teacher choice. And through the course of this investigation, I think we started with a very simplistic view of what concurrent teaching was, which is at the beginning of this, it was sort of the idea that 100% of the time a teacher would be teaching to a group of kids in their classroom while at the same time teaching a group of kids at home. And what we learned through this investigation is that really doesn't accurately portray what concurrent teaching is, and it really ranges from the idea that teachers certainly would be teaching. That model is one of those models, but I think there is a variety of techniques that we learn that teachers are doing. Some teachers are greeting the class at the beginning, both remote and in person. Other teachers in the middle of a class will pair up kids who are remote with the children who are in the classroom. Other teachers were using it as a question and answer period before they got into the meat of a lesson. I think there's as many variations. And so as we were going through this, we realized that we needed to think about this model differently. And so we started using the word blended learning, because again, it relies on our teachers making informed decisions, not just about their content, but about the students they teach. So in any given class, whether it's science or art or English, teachers are making decisions based on where children are, their assessment of where they are. They're making decisions based on the needs of those children and the content they're trying to teach. And as you can imagine, logically, a science class would look completely different than an English class. So teachers are adjusting their teaching style to meet the needs of those children. The big question in the charge was, is it feasible for us to be able to do this in the district? And, realistically, it is feasible. And then the next question was, well, if it's feasible, do we have to invest, thousands upon thousands, tens upon thousands of dollars in new technology to pull it off? The answer is no. What we discovered, Todd and I, when we were doing our observations, or UC and I and Todd, when we were doing the conversations with educators from our state and beyond, was that people are not necessarily investing in, $5,000 OWL systems that track the teachers across the classroom. The reality is that it's happening with a minimum of technology, which would include a second monitor so a teacher could observe the kids at home at the same time that they're talking to the kids, and putting a lesson up on a different computer so that everybody can see it. So a second monitor really was strongly recommended. And then a microphone for the teacher so that there's no question that the children at home could hear the teacher, and the teacher could hear the children at home. Then beyond that, it just became, what devices would enhance the experience. So that's as little of the technology as was necessary to pull this off. I think the bigger issue wasn't about the physical technology, it was about our broadband capacity. And as you know, Josh has done a fantastic job of building an infrastructure that can support video and audio. But we did not envision that video and audio would be working constantly through a school day in every single classroom. So I think the takeaway here is, even though we have a very strong broadband network in the district, we're going to want to watch the demands of that system as we gear up for a concurrent blended model. And so we're not actually asking for the broadband to be changed. We just want to make sure that we monitor it carefully. I think that the success of these models in various schools across New Hampshire and outside of our state really boiled down to effective teaching strategies made by teachers in the classroom. And I would think that in terms of how we operate as a district, that this model used by our teachers could be used effectively. In every single case, everybody we talked to said the model does take more time and more energy by teachers because you're trying to do two things at once. But at the same time, we had teachers who said the workload was palatable, was manageable, was worth it. And we heard from teachers who said it was too much. And these are teachers who are doing it. So short of all of that and reading a very dense report, I do want to say that I was very impressed by the educators who participated in this work. I think that this document and the asynchronous synchronous document we produced at the last meeting really can service our teachers extremely well. And one of the ways that Todd and I have been talking about ensuring that these get read by our teachers is doing what's called a close read, and using the lens of equity, actually. How do we deliver equitably across all of our learners? And so part of what we're going to do is utilize New Hampshire Listens to do a close read on these documents with our staffs K through 12. And I think that will guarantee that everybody will have had a chance to look through it and have questions and so forth. We do have some interest at this point and implementing the model at the high school. And what we have said is that anybody who wants to implement a blended or concurrent model will have the absolute support of administration. We are not dictating to any teacher that they have to do this, but we have opened up a path for those who want to. So that would be my report. I'd be glad to answer questions, or if Todd or UC want to add anything that they feel like I've missed or want to enhance, I'd welcome their comments as well.
I had a question. When you surveyed the schools, did you find that this model was used in middle schools, or was this primarily a model used in high schools?
We found that the model was used in elementary, middle school, and high school, but and I would say that the older the student, the more successful the model is. Unless you have very, very small classrooms at the elementary, I think that the model would be a challenge just based on the developmental level of the children. But we did see successful models at the elementary, middle school, but it tends to lead itself to an older child, to a high school age.
If I could just add to that, Tom, the other variable that we learned was that the division of in-person versus remote students made a difference. So typically, if you had a dominant group, like say 3/4 of the kids were in person and quarter were not, it was easier to accommodate because the larger numbers that were being accommodated in an alternative mode. So it was less about the age level and more about the balance of the group between remote and in person.
Other questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to quickly thank UC for really being the catalyst for getting this initiative going. And just briefly, even before hearing everything tonight, I was just really struck at, how thorough this report is. Really appreciative for the teachers who, do not teach in the district, but were willing to help us learn about this. I think this exploration it was done in exactly the right way, and it's really consistent with the sort of culture of our district. Having the courage to explore new initiatives, new methods, and maintaining that common denominator that is really putting the decision in the hands of the teachers who are teaching these classes to decide, do the variables that they're dealing with align with what we've learned here. So thanks to everybody involved. I think this is a real help to our district and our knowledge base.
Denise?
One of the things that I saw in the report was the importance of professional development time. And, we just voted last meeting to take away one of the two professional development days, but in particular, the one I'm thinking about is the one coming up in March, to put it at the end of the year. But, adopting this model, I'm just wondering if there will be a need to add that additional time, and I understand for our district, at least initially, we're looking at it just in the high school, but I just want to make sure that we do have the time that the teachers need to be able to implement this successfully.
I think you heard from Suzanne in her report the amount of effort that's going into using those Wednesdays to do a lot of this PD. So it is something that they're already in the process of doing. So I really think the effective use of Wednesdays makes a big difference.
Are there others? I don't see any other hands up. Are there other questions for Todd or Jim or UZ?
Al's hand is down.
I've
Okay.
had my hand up. So,
Okay.
Maybe it's like hidden down in the corner. So actually, it's more of a comment, and it's hard to think of it this way during the pandemic, but this is the silver lining of the pandemic. And so much of what we've talked about in terms of educational reform, we talked ad nauseum for decades, but the pandemic has really smashed the paradigm and forced us to rethink things. And so while everybody thinks about we want to return back to the normal school day, which we do, we tend to minimize some of the problems that we had in the regular school day. And that is like scheduling and homework are two items that were really, really difficult to work within the rigid structure of the traditional school day. And so I think what's kind of cool about some of these things that are coming forward is they give you some flexibility that we can incorporate when everybody does go back. That doesn't mean that we won't use these technologies, for example, like office hours at home or homework help or things like that. Really can utilize this technology to extend the school day or to extend opportunities to kids. So again, it's hard to think of it that way, but really this is the silver lining.
Yuzi?
I wanted to acknowledge the other members of the committee who really just put their shoulders down and worked countless hours in these 5 weeks. Allison Jumper, who formerly with Bow High School and representing All Together now, which supports students who are deaf and hard of hearing. Laura Vittorioso, Barrington Elementary School. Carla Wiles-Basco from Boxford Middle School. Darren Scopel from Spalding High School. Brian Cisneros on the board, also sharing Farmington's experiences. Janet Martell, Doug Hoff from the Guild, and John Bromley and Sarah Cathay from the High School Science Department.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that team for the excellent report.
You're welcome. Just moving on, we already talked a little bit about the anti-racism and the draft of the work that we've done to date. So I would move on to the central office. At the last, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, maybe it was a month ago, Al suggested that we create a framework for Sue and myself and Todd that's similar to what we do for the ORAA. So over the course of that time, we lifted the ORAA language as much as possible and turned it into an agreement so that central office has guidelines to what their benefits are. In addition, these are the last 3 employees that have not been approved for a pay increase for next year. So I'm recommending a 3% increase for the 3 central office administrators. I'd be glad to answer questions on this as well.
Michael?
So what does this replace? This information was somewhere in the past. What is this replacing?
It really wasn't replacing anything, Michael, believe it or not. All we did was we simply just assumed that the benefits for ORAA applied to Todd and Sue. What this does is it puts it in writing. It just never was in writing before.
And was the board's negotiations committee involved in this one?
Well, this was a direction from the full board to do this, so that's why it's done. But if you wanted to go back to negotiations, it certainly can.
So if there aren't any further questions, could we have a motion to approve the?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I did have
sorry,
my hand raised.
Okay. I didn't see it, Denise. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. So I guess the only other question I had, the fact that it was just put in writing that basically what's reflected in this document is what has been practiced. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, Denise, you are.
Okay.
Dr. Morse, I'm hearing that this is essentially the same contract, but broken out for the central office administrators. Are there any appreciable differences between the two contracts, the ORAA contract that it was based on and this one that we should be aware of?
Dan, there are no appreciable differences. We just tried to change language so it reflected the roles of the business manager and assistant superintendent. But in terms of benefits and those kinds of issues, it's the same. So no appreciable differences.
And Dr. Morris, my understanding is that next year we'll start another looking at probably a 3-year sequence and looking at certain equity issues, because we decided, I think, Mal, correct me if I'm wrong, not to look at that this year, but to look at that in the context of the next 3-year agreement. Is that correct?
That was my understanding from the board, that they didn't want to make any equity issues related to positions in this particular upcoming school year, but would investigate them for future years.
Yeah.
That's
Michael?
also what I heard. The only, sorry.
Well, so we may not have had a specific agreement with the assistant superintendent and the business manager, but we do with the superintendent. How does this agreement interact with the existing contract?
Thanks, Michael. So I did put language in, it's under J. It just says, in addition to the benefits set forth, the superintendent's contract may have additional specific benefits as per agreed to by the superintendent and the school board. An example of that is I don't take health insurance. And in lieu of that, the board has approved a $10,000 annuity.
Al?
So the only thing I would suggest is a change in time frame. Generally, all of our negotiated contracts are done during the budget cycle so that we have them completed when we complete the budget. And so I would like to shift this, or suggest that we shift this, that this is done in the November timeframe or October timeframe when we do the budget, not after we've completed the budget and it's come about. So it doesn't make sense to do it this way. We should do it during the budget cycle.
So that would be for next year then, right? That's a recommendation for next year, right?
Yes. Sorry, man.
Okay.
Like a little technical difficulty here.
Okay.
I guess I think there are some things in this that maybe they are reflecting current practice, but they're being codified in a new way here, and I think it merits some discussion amongst the board to really understand everything that's in this agreement before we vote on it.
Is this discussion would have to go into a non-public, or?
Well, I guess I'm looking specifically at section. Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Yes, but non-meeting. Yeah, there's a lot in this agreement, and it's if this is all just kind of the way things have been, we shouldn't just do that by default, is my opinion. So either we can put it off, or I'll vote against it, or whatever. But there's a lot here to just kind of put out there without the negotiations committee or anybody else taking a look at it. I think this is a lot to hand to us like this. So.
Well, I can tell you, as somebody who writes these contracts for a school district, these are not out of the ordinary. This is not an ordinary contract, and I like the fact that it's actually codified more than, it's even more in depth than the ones that I write. But as far as the benefits and everything else, everything is in line with these positions. I don't see anything out of the ordinary here.
Still, since it's new writing, if you'd feel more comfortable, Michael, I mean, I agree. I would prefer to explain everything to everybody, go over it all, just so that, because again, this will become the base plate for the future. So if people are more comfortable, then we have time to do a non-meeting at the next meeting and go over a more detailed explanation.
So are people comfortable with having a non-meeting? Is it a non-meeting to look at negotiations?
Yeah.
I guess I always have trouble with that.
Yes.
We're missing that blue folder, so I can't tell you.
I think it's worth waiting. There's no urgency to approving tonight. Am I correct?
No.
So I guess a question, are you suggesting that we go through every item of this, or are there certain issues that we want to look at? I mean, it would be a pretty tedious thing to go through every item. Just
I can just
Could
do
I-
I could do it side by side because we lifted this from the ORAA contract, and you can see what changed just by looking at it, by comparing it.
is that what you're suggesting, Michael? Just to looking side by side with the ORAA contract?
Well, I think I would want to look at the superintendent's contract as well, and I specifically am wanting to dig into Section 8, the contract term and renewal provisions.
So I think it would be worthwhile to just have a non-meeting to just maybe discuss, what anyone, in terms of concerns and where we should, how we should proceed, I guess.
Okay. So I'm hearing a consensus to put this either as a non-meeting or non-public meeting, whichever is appropriate on March 3rd. Is that agreeable?
Yes.
Thank
you. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Finance Committee?
I just have a brief thought. It's like, so as I was standing doing the deliberative session, doing the budget, I couldn't help but look out at this person, even though they had an N95 mask on, ruffling through the papers. And it was abundantly clear the person had absolutely no idea what I was talking about on a $50 million budget. And that person was not alone. And so after the deliberative session, I went back and wrote up a budget report. And so I included what the process is of approving a budget, how we work through it. I did like what I thought were the two main obstacles of the budget, including the fitting the middle school bond in over the next 4 budget cycles, and also the COVID contingency, an explanation of what our budget goal is, including a breakout with a table. I went over the Fund 10, just kind of the highlights of the Fund 10. I then went over like apportionment and how apportionment is affected by state aid, and then my final thoughts. And I threw it up because I needed a space to store it on the Celebrate Durham site, and it's under the tab of community. But in my mind, it was like one of those things like, oh yeah, that's what we should have done for the public hearing. And so I think that and when we meet again as a finance committee as a whole, Michael and Brian can chime in. But I think that lays a template for explaining to the public how the budget actually works in more detail. So, again, it was just my first stab at it, but I think that's something that should be done in the future.
Al, I'm going to tell you, it was such a good explanation that I put it up on my Facebook page because it did better than I could have. So, honestly, it was great. So I appreciate you doing that.
It's a high compliment. Al, I had a question. Do you think that template should be accessible from the district website?
Yep, I do, especially right before the budget. I think it really runs you through the budget well. And I had a question that, ironically, the only question I got on the budget came from the Durham Town Council, which was Cardinal Welsh, of course, was asking me about Lee and Madbury not approving the budget. And I think the explanation that's in that document really clearly shows why Lee and Madbury are getting hit. I didn't pull up the previous budgets, state aid, to show how they benefited this year, but again, I think it would be really, really useful for people to look at it.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Denise.
So my only, and I haven't seen it, and again, it's probably a great explanation, but in terms of, acting in an official capacity really should have been like come before the board
Well, it's not
before.
official capacity.
Yeah, it's not
actually
official
my
capacity.
write-up, which is a First Amendment right, actually.
Right, which is fine, But now what I'm hearing is let's put it up on the website, and I haven't even seen it. So I'm just saying, again, I just feel sometimes the lines are kind of blurry a little bit. So, I mean, I think that's great that you did a really good explanation, but I'm not going to approve without even seeing what is going up.
With all due respect, though, there's a lot of, I don't think you've read everything that's up on the school district website. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff up on the district website that you probably have never read, or I can honestly tell you I've never read. And I bet you it's 95% of it that I've never seen on or read completely on the district website. So I don't think that's not the issue here. I don't feel.
Well, the issue is that if this is something that the board is saying, this is the board,
It's not the board.
represents the board, that, if it's representing the board, then it should come before the board for the board to see it. I mean, we've done this in the past where we've authorized a certain person, to write up a letter or done whatever, and that's fine, and I'm not saying there's anything, wrong with, I mean, I haven't seen it. But my point is that if it's representing the board, then the board should see it.
I think it's simple enough that, Denise makes a good point, that if we're posting it on the district website, I think it's perhaps clearer to the public, helpful to the administration, if the board simply all has the opportunity to read through it, and then we could just make a simple motion to approve it. I think it's worth going through the process.
Okay, so that can be on March 3rd as well. Right?
Sure.
But this is not directly related to that particular issue, but in terms of the comment from Councillor Welsh that Al mentioned, there are a couple of different bills moving through the state legislature that would revisit the fiscal capacity or the fiscal capacity provisions that were put in temporarily, or revert back to using previous year's enrollment numbers in terms of determining adequacy grants, either of which would have some benefit to the towns in Oyster River if they were adopted in the current, for the next school year.
And along those lines, Michael, I supported a petition that's being presented to that committee tomorrow, signed by dozens of superintendents across the state. Unlikely to benefit Durham, but it could benefit Madbury and Lee.
Okay, is there further things from the Finance Committee? Nope.
Nope, that's it.
Okay, Business Administrator, Sue? You're muted.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. So I just wanted to bring to you this budget update that I neglected to bring to you at the last board meeting. I always do one at the end of January, and this is actually as of the 1st of February, just to give you an idea of where we are. I know we're talking about adding some positions, and salaries and benefits have some balances, so I wanted you to see where those are. And then I also, for my own purposes, noticed that we have not reclassed the $400,000 that we received from the state, the $434,000. So you can see the district is bearing that. So really, this report is about $400,000 more than it is compared to last year, well ahead of where we were at this time last year. Any questions?
Sue, is this a new report? Because I know you used to put percentages over on the side.
Well, I think Wendy revised it a little, and yes, you're right, I do have percentages on it, usually. But yeah, I can do that for the next report in March. I'll do another one at the end of March, and that'll give us a much clearer idea, because by then we should have hired most of those positions that were authorized for supporting more students in the building. So I will do that. And the other thing that might be helpful, I've done in the past, I put a comparison to the prior year. So I could always do that too, just to give you an idea. If I run them at the same time, which I usually do.
So I have two questions on it. One,
Okay.
oh, I'm sorry. The one
just-
was like the sped line, and the other was the technology line.
Right.
Is that technology? Is that the middle school stuff flowing in
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because it's been encumbered already, or is that where that shows up?
Yeah, that's where that shows up. It has been. Correct.
And so my question was kind of related. I know that the encumbrances cover most of, substantially everything that we're going to be spending for salaries and benefits, but can you speculate a little bit more about the encumbrances and on the all other part where we don't?
Well, we did this year. Actually, this is a little different too. We did go through and encumber most of the utilities. So this does include encumbrances for utilities. We speculated on electricity, natural gas. Pretty sure most of them we went through and looked at history from prior years just so we could get an idea. So we did do those encumbrances. So that is a little different than we've done in the past.
So that gives us a little more confidence in that.
Yes.
The balance at the bottom. Okay.
Definitely. Yes, for sure.
So basically, you just cut the POs for all those services. So you encumber, which in turn encumbered the funds. So we actually know that that those funds are taken and reserved.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So you're probably not going to want to answer this question, but do you have a sense of the fund balance at the end of the year? You say we're ahead of last year. Is any approximations?
It's a little early, but to be honest with you, it's going to be well over $1 million just based on, what we know now. That does not include the grandstands, so that will need to come out of that. And of course, we have those other obligations that we committed to that will come out of that. So I think we'll be in a good place when we get to the end of the year for sure.
Good. Other questions for Sue? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Student Senate report?
Hi.
Should be the student rep report. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. It's the same either way. I just want to apologize for being late to the meeting. I didn't have the link, so I'm sorry if I thought I was a little late. But yeah, so I met with the Student Senate today, and we talked about the school is planning some more, or the Senate is planning some more activities rather for students to do. They're going to have like a snowman making contest and some other fun things to get students engaged as we lead up to that March 8th start return to school day, which I think all of the students who are requesting to go back, which is a slight majority, are pretty excited for, I would say. And in other news, there was the senior day last Wednesday, where the seniors went in for the first time, like officially. I guess it was their class day. So I think I don't know how much of the senior class went in exactly, but I went myself, and so I went and I saw a lot of friends, and so that was really awesome. And I know that student government is also planning a lot more activities for seniors. Specifically, we have our assassin game that we do April through May with the grandstand bleachers coming in. They're also hoping to do other school events besides graduation. So like Mr. Bobcat, which was something we missed that would usually happen during Spirit Week. They're hoping to have that later in May or June. And then the replacement for prom, the junior senior gala, is also being planned right now. And I don't think I have anything. Oh, the Black History Month. We just met with the DEI board. So the Black History Month activities are still continuing, and those discussions are still happening at the school, which I think is really awesome and beneficial. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Other questions for Megan? Yuzi?
Oh, Yuzi, you're muted.
Muted.
Not okay.
Yeah.
It didn't look like it, but there we go. Megan, I just wanted to really applaud the work to build joy and spirit. And I've been thinking about the high schoolers, particularly freshmen, who really for nearly a year now haven't been back, and the excitement for the 58% to be back at school. And yet, what a shock it will be to have the desks so separated, to still be wearing masks. And so all that you can do to be building that sense of normalcy when everything is not as it was, especially I think with the freshmen, is fantastic. So love those updates and thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and in terms of the coming back and like the school being different, the Senate was also talking about making like posters, kind of doing some decorating, getting the school ready, just so that students, it's going to be kind of like their first day of school, and they haven't really had one since September of 2019. So, I personally am very excited to go back, and I know a lot of students are also. So, we just want to say thank you to administration for putting in so much effort to helping us come back.
Other questions? Thank you, Megan. So I think we have a discussion item of the communications workshop, which I think that the action item we would have there is the charge that we've had in the backup. So, Dr. Morse, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. So as the workshop went on, there seemed to be like 3 different levels of work: what we need to do immediately, what we need to do in the short term, and what we need to do in the long term. And so I didn't try to capture all of that in one charge. I felt that this charge is the immediate issue. The charge that I laid out, subject to your collective input, is that the committee would lay the foundation for a more uniform and user-friendly strategy for communications at all levels of the organization, classroom, building, and district, and to look at communication from the user experience. So it's a very simplistic charge, but I think it's doable between the time we come back from February vacation until we get to April vacation. There are several people in the district who are parents who have communications expertise, and so I suggested the formation be community members with that expertise in communication, myself and Todd as the assistant superintendent. Then I thought it was important to have perspective from a building level administrator, the director of technology, and one of the technology integrators, as well as a classroom teacher. So everybody at all those levels is represented as we work through this issue. So that was the logic of this charge, and I tried to make sure it was something that would lay the foundation for the work that we need to do beyond this. So I open it up to the board's discussion, and we'll answer any questions, or if the charge needs to be modified, we can put that out there as well.
I'll say
go ahead.
It just seems like a reasonable first step. I mean, obviously, the charge could be then revised for once you get past that first threshold, but it seems to be a good start. Michael?
I completely agree, Tom, and I think that a natural outcome of this will be direction for how we use that communication specialist position, assuming that the budget passes.
Okay.
So I would move adoption of the charge as written.
Moved by Michael. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by, I'm sorry, is it Yuzi?
Yes.
Second by Yuzi. Further discussion of the charge? Hearing none. We have a roll call vote on it. So Denise Day.
Yes.
Al Howland.
Yes.
You're mute. Dan Klein.
Is it unmuted now?
No, you got it. We got you.
Yes.
Michael Williams.
Yes.
Yuzi Terrell.
Yes.
Brian Cisneros.
Yes.
And Tom Newkirk, yes. So by a vote of 7-0, that charge is approved.
Can I say that I'm amazed? I have to say that I'm amazed. It's the first time that we've done a charge where it didn't get changed dramatically. I really was
It's because
anticipating.
you did such a good job of writing it. I think the last action we have is a motion to approve the, let's see, no, we have, the motion to approve the policy ECFA sustainability for first read. Denise, you want to talk about that?
Right, so let me find it. Yes, so we just have the one policy because as we discussed earlier, a number of modifications were made to racism. So we're going to bring that back to policy committee before we bring that for first read. So the only one that we brought forward from our policy committee meeting for first read tonight is the environmental sustainability policy. And I don't know if anyone has any questions about it.
I'm just curious if there were specific goals or things you were trying to achieve in the way this was revised.
Dr. Morse, do you want, because I know that it was brought forth with the sustainability.
Hang on a second, I'm getting there, Denise.
Yeah.
So this was actually brought to us from the Sustainability Committee. And the first time that the district had a sustainability policy was 2013, because it was the first policy that I wrote for the district. And much like the racism policy, time goes on and language needs to change to reflect a current practice and a shared belief. So the committee took the policy and rewrote it. And obviously, I feel like, and Denise feels, and as Dan and Tom did, that it's better than it used to be. You know, it's sort of, bringing it up to date. So no specific objectives, just to bring the policy up to date, Michael.
You see?
Being newer to this process, I guess there's still the opportunity to give input or for the community to give input. I really like the inclusion of environmental justice concepts where sustainability is affected by these other factors. I think that likewise, environmental systems and institutions affect society and the and access to opportunity. And so I think that if we run this also through the equity and anti-racism group and maybe get a little tighter language around those concepts, not only around, like the last bullet is sustainable living as an individual choice, but also looking at some of the sustainable systems that that we're choosing to build. All this to say that I really like the focus that connects with environmental justice, and I think that a bit more wordsmithing on those particular areas will get us, right to where we want to be today.
Just so you know, this is a committee that is made up of a broad spectrum of community leaders. So it's had a review by a lot of people. So if you would just capture your thoughts in an email to me, I'll pass them on to the committee.
So could we still pass it on first read with the understanding that we're going to look at some of the language? Is that primarily the 1, 2, 3, 4th bullet? Usually, is it the fourth? Is it the fourth bullet?
Fourth, perhaps final. But I think where, as far as first read, it's a great first step. Okay.
I'm just trying to think, in terms of the question of wordsmithing, is it the wordsmithing primarily on the 4th bullet and what other bullet?
I need to think more about it and get advice from others, but the final bullet to me is really focused on individuals' choices And similar to the evolution of our district's anti-racism policy and understanding from, individual racist actions to system level challenges, I think there's something else about, climate
Okay.
change disproportionately affecting marginalized communities. There's something at the system level that's not just individual living choices.
Okay. So could we have a
That would be-
motion to, so go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, if I could say again, Yusi, I think that would be helpful if you could capture your thoughts and I can share them with the committee.
Will do.
So could we have a motion?
Just to clarify though, because it sounds like the bullet, because I'm a little confused because it sounds like what you're talking about more is the third, I guess it would be like the fourth bullet, but now you're saying the last. So yeah, I think it would be helpful to see in writing because I'm a little bit confused in terms of which ones you would like to see revised, because the fourth bullet definitely addresses just what you were talking about in terms of facilitating increase the awareness of sustainability is affected by social, economic, and cultural elements and factors, et cetera. So, okay, well, you can kind of make those suggestions and pass them on to Dr. Morse.
Okay. So could we have a motion to approve, policy ECFA for first read?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Denise. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dan. Further discussion? Roll call. Denise?
Yes.
Al?
Yep.
Dan?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Husey?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And Tom Newkirk, yes. So by 7-0, that's approved for first read. Moving down to school committee updates. Denise?
Thank you. My hand disappeared for a second. So yes, Long Range Planning Committee. I have another new member to bring before you. Yay. Actually discussing it at the last meeting, brought forward Heather Smith from Durham. So I would like to ask that the school board approve Heather Smith as a Durham representative to the Long Range Planning Committee.
Moved by Denise. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, is that you, Michael?
Yes.
Okay. Second, moved by Denise, second by Michael. Do you have anything to say about her? Do you know her? Or?
She was one of the candidates, if you remember,
That's what I
who
thought,
was
yeah.
interested in the school board position. So she, as she explained to the committee, she was looking for a way to get involved in the district, and she actually attended our last long range planning committee meeting. And I believe she had some great ideas, even being unfamiliar with the committee. So yes, I think she will definitely be a very valuable addition to the committee.
Great. So we have a roll call vote on adding Heather Smith to the Long Range Planning Committee. Denise Day?
Yes.
Al Howland?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
Michael Williams?
Yes.
Yuzi Terrell?
Yes.
Brian Williams? Brian Williams. Brian Cisneros. Sorry.
Yes.
Tom Newkirk.
Must be your gravitas.
Yeah. It's the voice. It's the authoritative voice. Tom Newkirk, yes. By 7-0, Heather Smith is appointed to the Long Range Planning Committee.
And then I would just like to add that we do still have an opening for a Madbury resident. So if there's anyone watching this school board meeting tonight and would like to become a member of the committee, please come forward. It is not a long term, generally a heavy time commitment. Usually the committee meets a few times a year. Right now we are meeting a little bit more frequently because we are trying to look at possibly changing the model to kind of adopt maybe more accurate ways of predicting enrollment. But yeah, anyone who is interested, or you can just get in contact with me if you'd like to find out more about it.
Okay. Other committee reports? No. So we are going to have the walkthrough. Was it a week from Friday? Is that Brian?
Yep.
For the so have people gotten back to you on that?
I've heard from UC, Denise, and you. I haven't heard from Al, Dan, and Michael.
Okay. Maybe when we should maybe.
Are you guys planning on coming to the middle school walkthrough next Friday at
Can
2?
you remind me what time it is, Brian?
Next Friday at 2:00.
I'm not sure. It's like vacation week, so I'm not sure.
I think I have something.
I'll let you know.
I will let you know. I might be able to make it.
Okay.
Okay, just shoot me an email if you when you do. Either way, let me know, because I have other people that I would like to fit in there too.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Because we could probably take as many. I think we've had like a dozen on the walkthrough, so we could probably take more than just even if you had all 7 members, I think you could take a few more.
Yeah, I was thinking like the ORMS committee and stuff. A couple of those probably.
Yeah.
Megan, have you been through the middle school?
What?
It's funny you ask. I'm actually going tomorrow.
Okay, good.
I'm writing an article for MOR built on building update on RMS. So I'm interviewing Mr. Richard and some of the other people working on construction. So I'll be touring it tomorrow.
Go to the very top, get the views.
Oh, I will.
And wear a coat. It gets cold up there.
Yeah. Okay. Public comment. I assume that there's no public comment since there was none at the beginning, right? Dr. Morris?
Correct. There is no
future meetings, March 3rd and the 17th, which will be the start of the next round of next organizational meeting. So we need a non-public session to continue to work on the superintendent's evaluation. Could I have a motion to go into non-public session?
Tom, I assume this is without me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and just before you take that roll call, Alex, will you be able to shut off streaming when they go on into non-meeting?
Yes, I will. Would you like everyone? I can put just the board in a breakout room if that is what you'd like.
That'd be perfect. Thank you.
Great.
Go ahead, Tom.
So could I have a motion to go into non-public session?
Who has their blue folder?
I can make the motion. I move to go into non-public session in accordance with RSA 91-A:3 HC. Possible information detrimental to reputation for the purpose of the superintendent's evaluation. I make that motion.
Second.
I will
Second by Denise. Okay. Roll call. Denise?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Yuzi?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Tom Newkirk, yes. So by unanimous vote, we're going into non-public session.
Thank you, everyone.